welcome everyone. This is the beginning of this playlist of this series called Fundamental Astrology, where pretty much I just break down the absolute basics and I even get into some of the more esoteric and harder things of astrology to understand and understand later in the series. So if you are interested in learning things from the ground up, then pay attention. Pretty much this first episode is going to deal with what I think some of the most basic things that someone could learn and use for themselves. This isn't going to teach you how to be an astrologer per se, but it will teach you how to be your own astrologer and how you can then perhaps read some people's charts and stuff without going incredibly deep, but deep enough to where you can be like, hey, you know something. So astrology is a very ancient and old practice, and all of this has evolved over the course of basically the past couple thousand years, as astrology wasn't always this. So I'm going to explain a few things here. I'm going to talk about a few main points. I'm going to talk about the ascendant, the descendant, the midhaven or the MC, or the IC, the Imium Quelli. And I'm then going to get into what they are, what they represent, where they are on a chart. As you can see, I've got a bunch of numbers and signs, sigils here that are in there, and letters. I'm going to explain all of what they are. We have a bit of the elements here, and these all then obviously produce the Shatkona, which is that sign right there. And it is much more older than what we know as Israel and the state of Israel. It actually means more than the Star of David, and it has a ancient connotation to the stars, as it literally is a star, and it's pretty much nothing to do with the Star of David. I wouldn't go down that path of learning what this actually is, because most of you already know how it's also a Merkaba. But anyways, that's a whole different one. Into what astrology and zodiac mean as a word, and also quadrants. So yeah, this is also right here. This is known as basically, this is the Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon, right? And this was a picture that I first ever saw actually when I was starting to learn astrology, and it taught me a lot. It made a lot of sense. So above this is the fixed stars and unconditioned consciousness, and this is as we go down, this is how our consciousness commits seven, and this is Earth over here. 7 sins and 7 virtues, right? So this is called the Primum Mobile. I'm just going to put that there. Primum Mobile. Right. Okay. So pretty much these are the things that I'm going to get into this episode. So stick around. This is going to get very interesting. So first, I want to start with the ascendant, okay? And I want to start with what this circle actually is. So I'm just going to draw you guys a simple empty circle over here. There we go. Okay, what is the ascendant? So the ascendant is pretty much when someone talks about your first house, okay? Now your first house is your ascendant sign. Depending on where you are on Earth, right? When you look east at the moment of a chart, or at the moment you're born, for example, right? East on the horizon is the ascendant, okay? And whichever stars are on the east is known to be your rising sign, your Ra sign. And that's when we can say, oh, you're a Scorpio rising, you're a Virgo rising, you're a Capricorn rising, so on and so forth. And you can actually calculate that depending on what time of the year it is and where you're born. Some astrologers are advanced to a point where if you tell them you was born in Angola at 3 p.m. On mid-December, they would know exactly what your rising sign is. And it's even easier to tell what house your sun is in based on just the time of day that you're born at. So this is actually very, very indicative. And the ascendant is the sign of the stars seen at the eastern horizon in the natal chart. It is the sign that will be the first house which will dictate the chart ruler. So I'm a Virgo rising. Virgo is ruled by Mercury. Chart ruler is then Mercury. I have to look at the chart ruler for many, many things, and that will be explained in the future. In this series, I'm going to have a video just for the chart ruler and when you want to pay attention to it and how to keep an eye on it based on what's going on. So The ascendant is whatever set of stars is directly east. The housing system and how you place that housing system within this will be like another layer and another like, and we're going to get into that with like the signs and how things work and whatnot. That's going to be for a different video, but pretty much that's what that is. The ascendant is always over here, and sometimes it might be flipped and it might be over here, but normally when you get when you pop up a chart from a website, it will be the eastern horizon, the ascendant. Now the sign of the ascendant denotes the shape plus constitution of the physical. So if we're looking at a chart of a city, of a country, and of a person especially, right, when we look at the ascendant, that ascendant, that rising sign, that sign there will tell you all about the constitution of the person. I'll give you a perfect example. I'm a rising Virgo. So Virgo is known as a bit more of a human sign, as it represents the maiden, a young woman. Its tarot card is the Hermit. So when we look at people with Virgo rising, depending on what planets they have in there, depending on what aspects those planets have, and if there are no aspects and no things in that house, then we look to the chart ruler and see those aspects. There's a lot of things that can go into determining that. That will be able to tell, you can use that to be able to tell what kind of body the person will have. Now, I am Virgo rising, as I said, so I have long hair like a lady and tall and kind of thin, a little bit like a lady. So that is pretty much opposite of what a Taurus rising would be like. A Taurus rising is a bit more stronger, bulkier, thicker type of body and constitution. Me, I'm a Virgo rising. I'm quite tall, smart, and that's what Virgo and Mercury is about. So that's a very easy way just to be able to tell whatever rising sign and body as well. So if planets are found in the ascendant, descendant, MC, or IC, they will accentuate or ameliorate, either put up or put down, the conditions of that first house. Like I said, if I have a malefic, so Mars or Saturn in my first house, I'm going to have to be very careful with those aspects, because my first house represents me. And the first house, just like the first sign, represents the first 2 hours of the day. So if I was born in between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., more or less in between, not even that, it's 6 a.m. and 8 a.m., right? Those are the first 2 hours of the day, pretty much. Okay, so the ascendant represents 6 a.m., the descendant 6 p.m., and the midhaven 12 p.m. or midday, and then the IC is midnight. Now, that pretty much depends upon what time of the year you're in and when the sun actually rises. So if the sun rises at 6:17 or 6:30, let's say, but then you remember this video where I said, oh, it's actually from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Those are the first 2 hours. It depends upon what time of the year you were born in, right? So normally the AC, as I said, is 6 a.m. and it's all the opposite, 6 p.m. and that's midday and that's midnight, okay? With that, you then are really easy able to tell. So I was born 10 a.m. more or less. And so my sun is in the 11th house. So these are the first 2 hours. Those are the next 2 hours. So after 10, more or less, depending on what time of the year, as I said, between 10 and 12 is when your sun, well, 8 and 10 actually, is when your sun will be in the 11th house, between 8 and 10, not 10 and 12. 10 and 12 would then, so this is 6 to 8, this is 8 to 10, and that's 10 to then midday, the MC 12, and that's the third house. So after that, but like I said, it depends upon which time you were born at. So that's pretty much the ascendant, and the ascendant actually is quite a bit more important to pay attention to because, number one, of the chart ruler, number two, of your physical constitution. If you have a certain planet, for example, Saturn is about to enter Virgo and I'm a Virgo rising, or Saturn is about to enter Sagittarius and you're a Sagittarius rising, you want to keep that in mind. And you also want to pay close attention to Saturn and the aspects that it makes. And I will be making a video on aspects and how to do all of this. So all in due timing, and you will have everything you need to be your own astrologer with this series. So I'm going to move on to the MC and then the DC and then the IC. The MC now, actually in magic, MC means Master of Ceremonies, and you might have heard MCs being used exoterically in holy places or on ciphers, on raps, people that are rappers and they can spit, they're called MCs, but that really means master of ceremony. And what that really means is a master of magical ceremonies. Now, in astrology, because astrology is fundamentally related to magic and it is a foundational principle of magical works and magical rituals and so on and so forth, as Agrippa would say, we have the MC right at the top of the chart. So as it's the top of the chart, it overlooks everything. It stands at the top of the circle, right? And it's almost like the highest point in the sky. So the MC, which is the 10th house, so the AC is the first. This is the 10th over here, okay? So the 10th, the MC, the 10th house, is to do with the social standing plus the spiritual outlook of the native. Planets found here will greatly impact a person's spiritual attainment slash outlook on life. So for example, I have Saturn, right, in my 10th house. That means that will impact heavily my outlook and my spiritual attainment. Now, because it is a malefic planet, it can go good, but because it is the most wisest planet, it can go very great or bad. It depends upon the aspects at the moment, at a certain moment in time, or with my natal Saturn and what's going on in real life. But generally, when we're looking at a person's chart, we look to the 10th house to see, okay, what kind of career is this person suited for? That's also based upon the North Node, which I'll make videos for, Rahu and Ketu, North Node and South Node. We also looked at that for the career, but the 10th house will tell you a great deal about your career, your public image, how you are seen, and how others see you, right? So this is the most exposed part of your chart. And just for reference, in case you guys don't know, anything from houses 1 to essentially like 6, 7 is your private life, and above these on top are your public life, okay? And that's a very, very nice and easy way to just like read charts, also with these quadrants that I'm going to explain. So planets at this point have a powerful presence and are said to be culminating, coming up to something, that they're coming up to their full shine because it's at the basically top part of the sky. The medium coeli, the MC in Latin, means the highest heavens. So as it means the highest heavens, it means our highest triumphs, our highest points in life. So with whichever planets and aspects are in there, we are able to see very quickly what it is that a person will attain in their career. So over here we have, this is representing midday, the MC, right? Because that is at the top of the chart, it means that you want to pay attention, for example, to anything aspecting a planet or an asteroid or anything within that 10th house, okay? And this is the first, second, third, until you get to the 10th right here. So as soon as it switches over to the 10th over here, this 10th house, that is a cardinal sign. So all of these, the AC, MC, DC and IC, they're all cardinal signs, which I'll get into, but that's also why cardinal means, cardo means hinge in Latin. Let me just put that somewhere over here so you guys can make note. Cardo equals hinge, which is why the geocentrists always tell you there are 4 corners of the earth, because those are the hinges, those are the 4 corners. And it's almost like a square around this circle, okay? So the MC is where you pay attention to if you want to learn about your career, your future, where you're going, how to better your career, maybe what type of career you should pursue, and what sort of activities benefit you, what sort of people you can have around you that will benefit you for your long term, for your future, and for your career. So next is the Descendant. The Descendant, this is the DC, AC, DC. So it's always 180 degrees across the ascendant. And yes, sometimes you might load up a chart and your AC is a little bit over there and your DC is over here, or like a bit different. I'll explain the housing system and how that exactly works in another video. This is really, really fundamental, really, really basics, and I want to get into explaining what it actually is. So the DC has to do with how others act towards you / their impact on you. It also describes what type of relationships you will attract in general and in marriage and partners, and also in business relationships. So one-to-one business relationships, your marriage, your partnerships with your wife, your husband. This is all the seventh house over here, okay? Now, this is known as the DC, so descendant. So this is you, and this is the house of others. So how others see you, how you interact with others will be based on that. So because I'm a Virgo rising, opposite Virgo is Pisces. Pisces is then my seventh house. If you have a planet in, let's say, the current world transiting your natal seventh house, I'll give you guys a perfect example. A few years ago, Saturn entered Pisces, my seventh house. You can imagine that my relationships and my things would be a little bit intense and a little bit death-like, or they will be ending, or something will be happening that is Saturn-like in that area of my life, because that's what these houses represent. Houses represent an area of your life. Signs represent an area of the sky, and that depends upon if it is tropical or sidereal, which we will also get into in a different day. There's a lot to cover, but pretty much the descendant, like I said, is always opposite your ascendant, and it is how others act towards you and their type of impact that people have towards you in life. Okay. Also, the DC is a little bit of how people can kind of see you, you know. You could say the MC is also like that. The midhaven is also how people kind of perceive you, but the DC is also quite how people see you. This is how you see yourself and how you know yourself and who you are, and this is how other people know you and how they kind of what they think of you. So that's pretty simple. I hope you guys got that. And yes, it's not only for marriage and your partners in relationships, but also your business relationships. So if someone comes to me and they want to book a consultation with me saying, hey, Sion, or hey, Danny, I have a business proposition. Yeah, I'm not sure how this business would go with this person and da 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 da. I would immediately set up a chart for that business that they're being approached by, and also pay close attention to what their seventh house is going to be like in the coming time, and what their seventh house in synastry, which is two charts in one, has in relation to that business that is approaching them. So if you want to look at someone's business, how they're going to make money, how they're going to react with this business, if communication is going to be good, if communication is going to be bad. Yes, the seventh house does speak a lot to your business and your partnerships, whether it's your one-to-one business or you and an enterprise or you and an organization. This is the IC, the Imium Quelli. And okay, so the Imium Quell or Quelli means the lowest heavens in Latin. This is the private part of your life, right? Part of your life that you don't really share with other people, but also that other people don't naturally see. Okay, so this part of the chart represents the foundation of a person's life / early years, which is what I'm going to talk about here with these quadrants. But pretty much these are the early years of your life that I see, okay? These are, you could look to the IC for pretty much what happened as a youngster in your life, in childhood. Or you could also look at it as like, what is a foundational feeling or theme or characteristic or archetype in your life. So if I look at someone's chart and they had Saturn or Uranus, let's say Uranus, for example, conjunct their IC, I know for a fact in their early years, they went for a lot of Uranian themes. And I could look at that as like things breaking down and being revolutionized and coming back up. I could look at that and think, oh, that's Aquarian energy in their life. Maybe societies, communities, things breaking up, things being made again, and connections like that. So this is always a very good indicator of someone's early and private life, what they went through in their most inner self and their most inner parts. It also denotes or shows parents, your home, your living conditions, and your family. So yeah, if you have some malefic aspects like your Mars or your Saturn in there, then it's most likely going to affect all of these. You either have poor living conditions, a poor connection to family, or a poor connection to your parents. And that happens, and that is very, very much so readable in astrology, because a lot of the time people, when they come to me, I will instantly look at these first. These are the first couple things that you want to look at, more or less. So ultimately, this part of the chart shows what our inner foundations are like, and also ancestors, property, and real estate. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to pretty much tell you guys this side. Okay, I'm going to speak to you about the logos and the zodiac. So astrology can be broken into two words, which is astro, logos, astro meaning stars and logos meaning the word. So astrology, therefore, in this word that we have nowadays, astrology or logoi, because logos also can be said as logoi, Logoi. Logos means the word, and I'm going to make a video on this, but every sign, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, so on, has a logos, and Aries is I am. It is a very independent sign. Taurus is I have. Gemini is I communicate, I think. And so these all have like their own, all the signs have their logos, but a logos in general means the word. So when we say astro logos, what we're literally saying is the language of the stars. And zodiac, so dia means day in Spanish and Portuguese, and also Latin pretty much. It also means day. So when we say zodiac, what we're meaning is a circle of animals, because a day is a circle in the eyes of the sun, above our geocentric realm. So what we're referring to here is zoo, animals, and diac. So it's the animals and the circle. So it's a circle of animals. That's what zodiac means. So over here we now have these alchemical symbols. We have the triangle. Then we have the triangle with a little cross in it. And then we have an upside down triangle and an upside down triangle with a cross in it. Okay, so this is the fire triplicity. Okay, now this is pretty much me explaining the triplicities and quadruplicities. And I'm going to do that with all these numbers in here and all of these signs and symbols in this part of the chart. So your fire ones is Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And your airy ones, which is this over here, is Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. Your water is your Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And then obviously your earth is Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo, which is my rising, as I said. So you can easily see what someone's elements are as well once you learn these off by heart. And you can see what kind of a constitution or, you know, that person will have based upon the element, so on and so forth. So elements were brought into astrology a long time ago. It's been very well known that every sign corresponds to a certain type of element, and they were grouped, and this is now called essentially a type of quadruplicity, which is a type of element, okay? And then we also have triplicities, okay? And I'm not going to explain the triplicities in the housing system, which is angular, succedent, and cadent. But there are other triplicities that are to be paid attention to. And namely, what we're talking about is, okay, so before I even go on to that, let me just explain this here. So with Aries and with the start of the zodiac, before I just leave this here, we have fire, earth, air, water. And then that begins again. Fire, earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water. So that repeats itself 3 times. Fire, earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water, and then one last time. So the quadruplicities, you could say, is simply the elements. The triplicities, as I was saying, is what these letters are in here for. So we have C, F, and M, C, F, M, C, F, M, and C, F, M. So it's not like these 4 that get repeated 3 times. These 4 get repeated 4 times. So there are 4 cardinal signs. That's what the C here means. So Aries, Libra, Capricorn, and Cancer are cardinal signs, right? And there will be one cardinal, one fixed, which is, and then Taurus, and then the second one, and then mutable of each sign. So the mutable air sign would be Gemini, the mutable fire sign would be Sagittarius, and then so on and so forth. And this is a very good way of also analyzing people's charts and analyzing your own chart. If a planet is in a fixed sign and you know that planet, for example, let's say Mercury. Mercury likes to move, Mercury likes to be about and do things. It's not really going to do the best in an earth sign, even though it can, depending on what type of earth sign it is. And that's exactly why it rules Virgo, because Virgo is a mutable sign, okay? And mutable means it can move. Fixed means it's solid, it's fixed. and cardinal means hinge. It is a very big energy that the cardinal signs bring. So those are your triplicities and quadruplicities, and I'm going to get really quickly into the quadrants before I finish off and explain this primum mobile, which I basically already have. So if you want a basic overview of how to read your chart, what you want to do is you want to look at the quadrants. Now, this is a very basic and easy way. And just as the AC, DC, MC, and IC, what you do is you look at 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 4 parts of your chart. Let's say I have all my planets here, or you go on an astrology website and you load up your chart. There's a lot of things on there. You don't really understand it. If you basically just look at the first 4 quadrants, so you split the chart into 4, right? Imagine this, but in there. So if I have a bunch of planets over here on the first quadrant, that means I can then start analyzing that first quadrant to be able to tell what the early life, what that person was becoming, and basically their identity. But what I mean by what they're becoming is how they changed and how they transformed. That is looked at through the first house. The second house is what you express. It's more so your private life, and into your adulthood. It's your adolescence into your adulthood, the second quadrant. And these two, so the first and the second over here, they're more so your private life. These over here, your third and fourth, or your fourth and third, they're pretty much your life that people can see. Remember, this is the MC, what everyone sees of you and how people see you. This is where people start to see you. This is where people see you perfectly. And then, yeah, so these top 6 houses, people can see that. These bottom 6 houses, people can't really see that. And then we have the third quadrant, which is to do with others. So if you really noticed already, yeah, it's actually quite easy to piece together. So this one here, the first quadrant, is much so ruled or to do with a lot of what the AC actually is, right? Remember, identity, who you are, what you physically look like, and what you have inside of you, okay? Like your characteristics. This is why your ascendant is incredibly important, more so than your sun sign a lot of the time. And it's not to say that the sun sign or the big 3 aren't important. No, they're very important. Everything in astrology is important and is to be taken into account for. But we have run into an era of astrology and astrologers that emphasize the big 3 a lot. And although that's good, don't forget the power of the ascendant. So like I said, this is actually quite indicative of how you can already see. So the second is to do with the IC, your private life, adolescence into adulthood. Your third is to do with your DC, and your fourth over here is to do with career, death, legacy, and the last part of your life as it's coming to an end. And that, the career, death, legacy, and that's to do with your MC. So that's the first quadrant, second, third, and fourth. So these quadrants, or this quadrant system here, is the most basic and easy way to look at a chart, see where the planets are, see what kind of energy is going into the early, the mid, the late, or the last part of life. And then you'll be able to tell, like, okay, cool. If a person comes to me and they want a reading and they are, let's say, in their 30s or 40s, I'm probably going to look to the third quadrant to see some things, any elements I can pick up, any trace meanings I can pick up. Because then by looking at their third house, I can tell, okay, cool, this is the part of life that they're in their 30s or 40s. That's their third quadrant. And I will use things in that third quadrant, and you can use things in that third quadrant to read about your own self, and so on and so forth. Last but not least in this video, I'm going to explain to you guys what this primum mobile is. Now, in ancient alchemical art, you have a primum mobile, which basically means, I'm not sure exactly what this means, but this is the prime or the first, and mobile, I'm not too sure what means, but it basically means, so you have the fixed stars over here, and this means how your consciousness gets conditioned. And when I say conditioned, we're talking about the 7 deadly sins and the 7 holy virtues, the 7 good and the 7 bad. And this is the exact order of which the planets, or the classical planets, are in. And you have to remember that in classical astrology, the sun is a star and the moon is a satellite. The rest are actual planets. So 5, and then we have the 2, which is the 1 star, the sun, and the satellite, which is the moon. Now, we have Saturn, which is the first, and Saturn represents the metal lead. So we have lead. And then we have tin for Jupiter. Jupiter is second. And this is actually true. So even in astronomy, Saturn is the furthest away compared to the rest of these. And then the next closest is Jupiter, tin. And then we have Mars, which is iron. And then we have the sun, which is obviously gold. And then we have Venus, which is copper, which is why I drink and wear plenty of copper, because it cleans you and it helps you and it helps your system. And then you have obviously the literal metal called Mercury, which is liquid at room temperature. And then we have the moon, which is silver. Okay. So Ida and Pingala, which is the sun and the moon, right, in the Oriental world or the yogic world. And then we have Earth at the bottom over here. That's supposed to be a sign for Earth in there, but it's quite horrible. So this Primum Mobile is, if you think about it, you are a soul and you get conditioned with the consciousness of these planets, with wherever they're at, with whatever other aspects they're making to the other planets. And this is how you come down into Earth. So like I said, this was pretty much a very simple video over here, guys, explaining a few things about the chart, the circle, how you can read this. And so I'm going to explain just before I leave what these sigils and numbers are. So this is the first house, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, 9, 10, 11, and 12th. And I'm going to get into what the houses actually mean in terms of what does the first house mean? What does the second house mean? What does the third house mean? All in these series of fundamental astrology. So those are the numbers out there. And over here, I've already explained, this is fire, earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water, and then one last round. And over here, we have the sigils for the planets, as I said. So Mars, Venus, Mercury, and then we have the two planets or satellite and star that only rule one sign each. So the moon rules Cancer only, and the sun rules Leo or Leo only. And then we have the same sort of symphony again. So we have Mercury, Venus, and then Mars after these two, after the sun and the moon. So we have Mercury, Venus, and then Mars. And then we have Jupiter for Sagittarius. And then we have Saturn, and then Jupiter classically. Obviously now we have Neptune that rules Pisces and not Jupiter. And we also have Uranus that rules Aquarius and not Saturn anymore. So that will completely depend upon which era of which astrology book you're reading. Nowadays, if you read a book published in the past 20, 30 years, 100% you're going to find that Pisces is ruled by Neptune and that Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. And they're not wrong. But they're also not wrong in saying that Saturn rules Aquarius, except when you actually do readings and you get into reading people's birth charts. And this is what I've done for a long time, is just read celebrities' birth charts and kind of like look at where they're going in their life. Or if I hear something from a celebrity, I will use that as a information and a basis for research. And when you do that, you can find and you can see that, yeah, you know, Uranus has a very big correlation with Aquarius, and that Neptune also has a very big correlation with Pisces. So with that being said, that's pretty much the first video of fundamental astrology, and I will see you guys in the next one when I start breaking down the houses and all of the other things that I've mentioned. So if you enjoyed this video, share it with some people. Maybe don't, maybe just drop a like. If you have any questions about this, pop them in the comments below and I will answer them, because I may or may not have explained every single thing here perfectly. But with that being said, I hope you guys take care and have a tremendous day or evening or night.